And we're back with Tazim. Now, you've told us all about your parenting, your marriage that ended in divorce. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And you're still building your career. You're being a super networker. You're up there rising through the ranks. And then something happened because you're no longer a GM. Now you're a therapist and a speaker. So at some point, your life you must have taken a break and cut everything off and refocus. So could you tell us something about how that happened?
Sure. So we talk about burnout.
Yes.
We talk about feeling like the wax around the candle wick
Hmm.
is all melted and the
Hmm.
wick is dead.
Right.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's like ah. So at some point, I had worked with the company for nearly 15 years,
Hmm.
and I just felt I actually it was a crucial point where I I had already started to meditate,
Okay.
which was something fantastic. In fact, I started to meditate uh, 2 years before I applied for the divorce, and
Hmm.
it was the thing that actually grounded me.
Hmm.
Okay, I was very fortunate to come across this practice and to learn it. Uh, of course, by now I had, over the last decade and more, started to ask those deeper questions. Why am I here? Why am I suffering? Why is everyone suffering? Why do we exist?
Hmm.
Those questions had become paramount for me through this process.
Hmm.
So in a way, I really thank and my ex-husband is a very interesting guy. He's a very outward, hardworking.
Hmm.
Uh, he's a good person.
Yeah.
He just didn't have what what was required
Yeah.
to be a good husband and a good father,
Hmm.
because he didn't have the background.
Hmm.
He didn't have anyone to lead him either.
Right.
So through that experience, I started to ask these questions more and more and more.
Hmm.
And that's how I came across meditation. I came across a lot of books, because that's a lot of books when I traveled, because I was in the tour and travel industry.
Yeah.
I had access to getting this outside. Um, so I'd already started on this journey of, okay, I need to rediscover, or I need to figure out why I exist.
Yes.
There's no answer to it, by the way, just in case anyone's waiting for an answer. There's
Okay.
no answer.
Uh-huh.
It's the experience of life.
Yeah.
And so when I when I started the divorce procedure, I I also realized that it was time for me to consider whether the work that I'd worked in the same period of time is where I needed to be, and was it serving me as well?
Hmm.
I think I must have been crazy,
Okay.
completely off my head,
Why so?
because I don't know if I'd have the courage today,
Okay.
to have the courage to get divorced, move out of the house,
Hmm.
and leave my job all at the same time,
Right. Wow.
literally pulling the rug out from under my own feet.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I must have been nuts.
Right.
And I went to South Africa. I went to a town called Benoni. I
Hmm.
was selected to represent Kenyan women in a competition
Hmm.
for women achievers.
Okay. Wow.
So when I was selected, I was married, I had a home,
You had a
and
job.
my job. By the time I went in November 1996,
Hmm.
I didn't have any.
Okay. Wow.
And so when I was being interviewed, there was 15 women from different parts of Africa, and I came third. So
Okay.
that was pretty good for
Yes.
Kenyan women.
Yes.
Um, the judges were like, "How would you do that?" So yeah, as you can see, I've made some decisions, maybe not all very well thought out or planned, like most people do. I just made a decision, did it.
Hmm. All right.
And that was yeah. And that's when I took a sabbatical
Okay.
because I was exhausted,
Mhm.
and the money I made, the pension I got in 15 years,
Mhm.
I had to use it for the 8 months that I was not working.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I was
Mhm.
sleeping. I was meditating. I was um, I was tired,
Yeah.
and I had to relook at my life and say, "Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
I'm 36 years old, and what happened?" You know.
Mhm.
Plus, I had to deal with all these emotions, and I had to deal with. The interesting part was I'd really had a lot of that come up over
Yeah.
the years. So it was like now I have two teenagers that I have got to cater for. I have no support system,
Mhm.
and the support system that I did have, I've
Cut it off.
and so I'm starting from scratch.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Don't ask me where that came from because I don't have an answer.
Okay.
It's just like even now when I'm talking about it, it's like what you know.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. Uh-huh.
So, following that, I took the 8 months off. I rested a lot.
Mhm.
And then I think around 6 months, 5, 6 months, I started to look for work.
Okay.
I was so sure I would
Yes.
find something. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
so simple
Okay. Okay.
because I was one of those women that was out there, that was bold,
Mhm.
that was challenging,
Mhm.
that didn't take nonsense.
Right.
And those are not the type of women that most people want to deal with.
True. True. True.
They want to deal with the mold they know.
Yes.
And ultimately, I was very fortunate that I met with the general manager of the Hilton
Mhm.
because my office had been in the Hilton for all those years. And he was one of the most amazing guys I have ever known in my life.
Mhm.
Uh, so was, the company I worked for. The boss was amazing. I learned so much. Honestly, I was very fortunate to learn so much.
Right.
However, it's like one knows or one feels that it's time to change lanes.
Mhm.
And that's what I went through without even understanding it.
Okay.
I just had this huge trust and faith that all will be well,
Mhm.
just from nowhere. And so I started to work for the Hilton as director of sales and marketing.
Mhm.
That was another whole experience, even though it's within the tour and travel trade. It's completely different.
Mhm.
So by the time I joined the Hiltons, I didn't even know how to use a computer. I had to learn to use a computer,
Wow.
and I had to learn how to get into this big corporate world,
Yeah. Yeah.
international corporate world. So that was a whole new experience.
Mhm.
So yes, that lasted 2.5 years, at which time I met my I got into a relationship and I met the second partner,
Mhm.
and his job took us to Canada.
Mhm.
So we moved to Canada. So another huge change.
Right.
And when we arrived in Canada, I was offered a consultancy with an airline,
Mhm.
Alitalia. And so I worked with Alitalia and their tour operator side. They wanted me to promote Italy to Canadians.
Mhm.
So it didn't, the fact that I was a tour operator here, it doesn't matter because it's the product and doesn't matter which country you're in, as long as you have those skills, they were
Yes.
transferable,
Mhm.
and communication and networking and all of that. It was quite challenging to move to a country that had a completely different landscape,
Mhm.
you know, completely different weather systems, completely different everything.
Mhm.
So settling in on that, and before I even got my feet on the ground, 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow. And during the tour industry, was your partner at the time also in the same?
Yes, he
Wow.
was he was he was actually the general manager of Alitalia,
Okay.
So they offered me a consultancy, but for another department altogether,
Uh-huh.
and it was called GA.
Okay.
So yes, this is how we managed. But
Yeah.
9/11 happened,
Yeah.
and my consultancy came to an end,
Of course.
and his work also.
Yeah.
And so that was a very challenging time for us. We went from living, pretty comfortably to counting coins.
Wow. Okay.
And that also had an impact on our relationship
Mm-hmm.
because it does, moving country, having this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so our relationship went on for 7 years, and then it came to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stayed, and then I went into a completely different industry,
Mm-hmm.
real estate.
Okay. How did that happen?
So for 8 months, or 10 months, I had no work, and the savings were dwindling completely, and we were actually, it was crunch time.
Actually, before we even answer that question, I'm curious, how do you, because I'm sure there's a level of anxiety that hits you as you watch your money, sort of run out and you still have your daily and monthly expenses. Did you experience any of
Of
that?
course,
How did you work around it?
I was petrified.
Okay.
I was worried. I was
Yeah.
concerned.
Mhm.
The We were in a country that wasn't that we were not even residents of yet.
Yeah.
We were just temporary residents, right? So I think the way my mind works and has worked is, what's the solution?
Mhm. Mhm.
So rather than getting paralyzed by the fear, and not that I wasn't,
Mhm.
but rather than stay in that stuck state, it's like, okay, what's the solution? The solution was, okay, we need to get our residency sorted out. I need to start looking for a job. So my job became looking for a job. And I was
Okay.
very fortunate because as I started to do this, I came across like in Canada, there are a lot of courses that one can do
Mhm.
based on uh, understanding and honing in on what skills you have, and how they're transferable, and what positions they would apply to,
Mhm.
which would make the search simpler. Because out there, anywhere in the world today. But because I had not had to look,
Mhm.
now it was looking and searching on a completely different uh, background.
Right.
And I had to start from scratch. It was like literally when I was 18 years old.
Mhm.
How do you look for a job? And carrying this concern because my partner had 2 kids, I had 2 kids, and we were
Mhm.
supporting them,
Right.
right? So how are we going to manage? And so, yes, all of that was there.
Okay.
You can't escape it. It's life.
Right.
And so I started to look for work. I did one of these courses, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks. It gave me a lot of oomph and confidence, and a great group of people, being with other people
Mhm.
that were going through the same thing as me,
Mhm.
having amazing teachers leading it.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. And uh, I was even more fortunate because they didn't charge me, even though I wasn't a resident. They
Right.
managed to include me
Wow.
at that point.
Uh-huh.
So that helped me with the job search. So it became like, literally I'm sitting on the computer from 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening, sending out my CVs, searching, researching, all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And this is how I found this position in
Real
real estate.
estate.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Canada.
In Canada. And this
Okay.
was at the master franchise level.
Right.
I went for tons of interviews, and all of them said, "You're overqualified because you've got this experience and you've
Mhm.
done this and you've had these positions." And uh, And of course, that famous question, which I can't stand, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Oh my
Yes,
goodness, I could
indeed.
be so dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, that question doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And so I would say, oh, possibly in your position.
Uh-huh.
That didn't go down well. So I'm very honest, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that didn't go down too well.
Mhm.
So tons of interviews. Finally, I got this position, and I was with the organization for about 6 years
Mhm.
at the master franchise, and I had to start from zero, huh?
Right, because you haven't sold real estate before.
No, and I wasn't selling.
Yeah.
Um, being the master franchise office
Mhm.
means that we had 210 franchises
Wow.
and 4,000 agents Canada wide that we took care of. And we
Mhm.
were 15 people at the head office that
Mhm.
took care of this entire operation.
Okay.
So my position would be to manage uh, referrals, to manage support, to manage customer service, to manage. And
Okay.
this is many roles as a single person. So
Right.
everybody was multitasking.
Yeah.
And so that was another whole new experience. I went from having a corner office
Mhm.
to a desk
Ah, yes.
and none of the fluff.
Yes.
Uh, and I remember when my daughter came to visit me at the office, she went home and she cried. She says, "What has my mother been reduced to?"
I see. Yes.
So it wasn't a reduction, it was just life,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But the way she was so used to seeing me, you see
Mhm.
that. And so not only that, during that time, then we had home office options. So I ended up working from home many days a week.
Okay.
Like I'd go to the office Monday and Tuesday, and then I'd come home with my laptop and the phone, and calls would be forwarded, and I'd be at home from Wednesday to the following Monday.
Mhm.
And the Monday and Tuesday I was at the office, everything was done on email and the phone. So I had no people contact. And I started really, kind of shutting in.
Mhm.
And so at one point I said, I can't go on like this. I need people contact.
Mhm.
So my daughter was working at a restaurant very near the house. And I said, please go and talk to your boss and ask if I can have two shifts.
Oh, wow.
And she said, you're completely mad.
Yes, I would too.
And I said, no, I just two shifts. If I can work 2, 3 hours,
Mhm.
2 hours or 3 hours midweek, and then maybe on the weekend, it'll just help me, be with people. I'm
Yeah.
in a cafeteria.
Yeah.
Finally, I managed to convince her. And she says, but I'm not working with you.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so I worked two shifts
Okay.
as a waitress.
Wow.
And then I was made into a supervisor manager very quickly.
Mhm.
Uh, it was fantastic
Right.
because I was working with these young people, customers would come. One of my best friends today is
Mhm.
someone I met at that coffee shop.
Mhm.
And he is a Canadian that lived in Mali and then has now moved to Ivory Coast. And I went and visited him in Mali. He came and visited me in Kenya.
Mhm.
So that's where I met him.
Okay. But I'm thinking about the incredible mind shift because I find that human beings we are attached to our titles and our job excuse me positions. So if I am a CEO right now, then I'll walk around this planet feeling and acting like a CEO until the position is yanked away from me. And it takes a great deal of refocusing your mind to sort of figure out no, I am not a title. I am a person and maybe the opportunities I should pursue are the opportunities that bring me joy, like you with the waitressing job. It gave you joy to be around people, and I suppose it taught you new things. But how do you reframe? How do you detach yourself from what you do to become who you are, so that you can reach your passions?
So because my life has been more about what is each situation here to teach me
Okay.
It is not about, yeah, having the position. Of
Hmm.
course, I went through the phase of being arrogant and jinga, like you're talking about,
Yeah.
this idea of titles and
Yeah.
carrying and
Hmm.
feeling so special and so important and all of that, especially considering what I'd been through. Then you do go through that.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point I actually got to a stage where I looked at myself in the mirror and said, I don't like you. You have all these airs and graces.
Hmm.
And where is that going to take you?
Yeah.
Right? So m- it was important for me to make sure that I didn't forget that this everything is temporary.
Hmm.
And I had, with the meditation, with the books I was reading, and I'm not a course junkie. You know how you have the workshop junkies?
Yes. I think I'm turning
Goodness.
into one of those, but
Are you turning into
okay.
one of those? Be aware.
Yes.
I wasn't one of those.
Hmm.
I wanted to learn, but I wanted to learn through my experience
Yeah.
and not just absorb other people's stuff. At this point, even at the same time, I had 1,000 books. And one day I woke up and I said, I don't want to read anymore because I'm just taking in everybody's information,
Yeah.
regurgitating it, and I don't have that experience. So I am going to stop right now and put those books in bags, and I gave them all away.
Okay.
Okay. So coming back to your question on how did I change this? I looked at it from the view, and everybody goes through this. Don't
Yes.
kid yourself that you're not going to go through this.
True.
This is life, it happens.
Hmm.
Is what did I have to learn from that? And what do I do next? And how do I do it and find the solution to that? And at the same time, know that it's not something I can hang on to because it may also go.
Right. Yeah.
So, our biggest issue as human beings is the fact that we really get attached.
Yes.
We get attached to the titles, to the roles,
Hmm.
to the identities, to the part we're playing,
To the partners.
to the house, to the
Hmm.
partner, to
Hmm.
the clothes,
Yeah.
to the car, to all of this. None of it is permanent.
Hmm.
And that doesn't make it easier.
Hmm. That's true.
Doesn't make it easier.
Yeah.
Even if you have an idea about it, the fact is that it doesn't make it easier. And then I have also done Vipassana,
Okay.
the 10 days of silence.
Yes.
And in that 10 days, I've done over, I think I've done a dozen courses in the last 13 years.
Hmm.
So that became more of my life. Front end, I had to work, have a job, make money, carry the guilt that uh, I got divorced. I put my kids through all of this, the guilt, the doubt, all of that was still happening while I was working through all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And still pursuing this spiritual part of my life.
Hmm.
And through these courses, you learn nothing is permanent.
Hmm.
Everything is temporary. So that was very helpful. Although I did this in the last 13 years, I already knew about it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, it's
Okay.
it's it's not been easy. However, uh, that's the way it panned out.
Right.
And then after 6.5 years, it was like 6 years. Um, I knew the job was coming to an end because we got a new CEO, and he didn't like women particularly, and he didn't. Him and I didn't
Get along.
not get along. It was it just wasn't working,
Okay.
and I wasn't the only one.
Okay.
So I knew it was coming to an end,
Hmm.
and I was like, I booked my first Vipassana in Canada
Hmm.
in June of 2008 for December.
Okay.
And I already said that by the time December came, my life would be very different without
Okay.
knowing. I already felt it.
Yeah.
So over these years, what had happened was my intuition had really started to
Sharpen.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it felt like I would feel things, know things, uh, because I was meditating. The one
Mm-hmm.
thing is I'm very disciplined. I was meditating. I was learning more. I was following the spiritual path, even though front end I was doing, the day to day living.
Yeah.
And so, of course, by the time December came, I packed it in with them. Um, I had made a decision to come back home.
Okay.
My aunt was going through cancer at that point, and I'd made a decision that I would go and spend a month with her before I came back. So all of this was happening when I went and did my first Vipassana.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea what I was coming home to or what was going to happen to my life.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that faith and trust. And now I was 49 years old,
For and
48 going on 49.
yeah, and that's such a scary age to be trying something new.
Didn't bother me.
Okay,
So age
excellent.
has not ever made me feel. In
Yeah.
fact, 60
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
has had not even 60 had an impact on me. I'm going to be 63 next month.
Mm-hmm.
And 63 seems to be like, oh, oh, really?
Yeah.
Kind of. But age has
Nothing to do
no.
with it. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So my I called my ex-husband and I said, I need help. It's the first time I'm asking for help.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I'm coming back home. Um, whatever I have to start from scratch. And I need a place to stay, I need a car, and I need help for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time in my life, really, that I'm asking for help and asking for help from the
Yeah.
father of my children.
Yeah.
And honestly, he was amazing.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
He was amazing. He
Mm-hmm.
supported me through it. Uh, and he still has unresolved issues with our divorce
Yeah.
till today.
Mm-hmm.
But he supported me.
Okay.
Okay. And I landed. I had no idea what I was going to do. People in the tourist industry started to contact me. And I said, I'm not going back to that industry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I was going to do. And 2 weeks after I landed, the first interview I had with Kobe Kihara at Citizen,
Yes.
and I started to talk about change, progressive change, about how we as Kenyans need to look at value systems, how
Mm-hmm.
we need to learn to communicate more effectively, how we need to consider the kind of leadership we're operating on. And all this stuff just started to come,
Mm-hmm.
started to come. And then I was interviewed by Jackie Tom at Drum,
Yes.
and then it was every newspaper, every magazine, every uh, news agency,
Mm-hmm.
radios, and it just.
Took off. That's
And I
amazing.
was like, "What is this?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I created this whole array of diverse offerings,
Mm-hmm.
from leadership to talk therapy
Mm-hmm.
to talking publicly about things that we needed to move in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I am here today. And then in 2016, end of 2015 to 2017, yes, 2016, 2018, I studied. That's when I learned hypnotherapy and regression therapy to
Right.
add amazing tools, life changing tools
Mm-hmm.
to this diverse offering. Uh, and here I am today,
Okay.
speaking with you.
Excellent. So we'll be back in a minute with more from Tazim's extremely inspiring story. So hit that notification button and don't forget to subscribe and share.